Yeah, I think so. It's just and then do we set it so oh, well, I think that's what you did, right? Because I was like, never. I did. Okay. Let's go. I think goes off. Just give manual and the live phone is done. I'm good.
I want to see something. I need a race. Yeah, that's
That's okay, no worries. If we need to, we can. The lighting is fine for the live stream if you wanted to like also see it standing. Okay, try. I control all this. That controls this.
What's the sweet?
Okay, so okay. Good evening, everybody. We're going to get started now. Good evening, everybody. My name is Caroline Abershar, and I serve on the AMS elections team as the Disputes and Policy Elections Deputy.
Welcome to the All-Candidates Debate for the AMS 2023 election. We're so excited. We're so excited to have 3 teams. It's going to be a great night. And I just want to get started with a land acknowledgement. Cataraqui, or Kingston as we understand it today, is abundant in historical and modern-day traditions of many First Nations and Métis. In particular, the Alma Mater Society, AMS, would like to acknowledge the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee territory which Queen's University resides on. These lands surrounding the Great Lakes are immersed in thousands of generations of Indigenous history, including language, art, celebrations, and resilience. While we live and work on these lands as uninvited guests, we actively benefit from the oppression of Indigenous peoples. Therefore, we must act in ways that will condemn past and ongoing violence against Indigenous peoples and support positive change. Founded in 1858, the AMS at Queen's University is the oldest student government in Canada. With that, we recognize that the AMS history has been intertwined with settler colonialism since its inception. It is now our collective responsibility to continuously reflect on and acknowledge the impact of this institution on Indigenous peoples. Thank you. Okay, so let's get started. I'm just going to go over some rules of debate so we all know what we're getting into here. We ask that for all of our speakers and our audience members to not clap or cheer while our candidates are speaking. Feel free to clap during intermission or while we're transitioning from one debate to another, and of course at the end. Please keep all comments respectful and suited to the tone of the evening. And we thank you all in advance for your cooperation. The schedule for this debate will go a little bit like this. First, we'll have our candidate for undergraduate trustee, Reem Al-Rawi, come up and give a brief platform presentation, and then followed by a 15-minute Q&A period. Then we'll move on to our executive teams, ERA, KMV, and TBD, who will each have 2 minutes to introduce themselves. We'll have a short intermission, and then we'll begin debates for each position. Each position, Vice President of Undergraduate Affairs, Vice President of Operations, and President will debate each other. VPUA candidates will go first, followed by VPOPs, and then presidential candidates. I will ask a question from a pre-approved list. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond, and then each candidate will have an opportunity for a 60-second rebuttal going in reverse order. This process will repeat once more with a different question for a total of 2 questions, and then each candidate will have an opportunity to make a 60-second closing remark. We'll do that for each candidate position, and then we'll have a 30-minute Q&A period where each team has a maximum of 10 minutes total to answer questions. Please feel free to submit questions over the AMS Instagram, on the YouTube Live, and some people have already done so beforehand. I'll give some concluding remarks after the Q&A, and that will be our evening. Do we have any questions from our executives? No? Okay, great. So we'll get started with Reem Al-Rawi. Sorry.
All right. Hi, everyone. As you've introduced, my name is Reem, and I'm running for undergraduate trustee. So I'm going to share a little bit about my platform. I've really chosen 3, I call them quite simple pillars, but I thought it was really important to choose these pillars because they'll help lay a very solid foundation that's going to help me do a great job as undergrad trustee, but also help future undergraduate trustees do a great job. And the first pillar that I've chosen is communication and collaboration with student leaders. So in the past, the undergraduate trustees haven't really collaborated a lot with the AMS or affiliated faculty societies. So this is something that I really want to work on because I think that increasing collaboration and communication would help, for example, better allocate resources, would help create better action plans, and would honestly in general just help us all reach more effective kind of solutions in the end. Also, the other thing is it's quite undeniable that the AMS has very large reach to students. And so as my job as undergraduate trustee, my biggest thing is trying to reach students in order to hear their advice and hear their feedback. So using the AMS's reach is something that currently, I don't really know what the best way to reach students is in order to hear their feedback and be a good voice for them. And so that's why I think one of the things that I want to do is explore various ways to reach students. So for example, having an online platform to have like anonymous feedback, or having like in-person coffee hours, and kind of keeping track of which method is most fruitful, so that I could use that and also future undergraduate trustees can continue using that. And then finally, the thing I wanted to kind of do is provide more clarity on exactly what the undergraduate trustee is, what the board is, and also what the structure of the board is. The question I got asked most when I was consulting or just talking with friends is, what is the board? What is the undergraduate trustee? What do you do? And so this is something that I think is really important to kind of address. And also, this will help students kind of make more informed decisions. And so what I mean by informed decisions is, for example, if a student comes up to me and they have no idea what the undergraduate trustee is, they might not be able to really provide me with feedback that I can really help on. And so if I were to better explain what the board is, then they could better kind of give me feedback that I could, I guess, work with them on. So yeah, those are my 3 pillars, and I'm happy to answer any questions now. Thanks.
Okay, so I'm going to start off with the first question for our Q&A. Of the people who you had consultations with, who influenced you and your platform the most?
How much time am I allowed to think? Because that's such a hard question.
The clock is running, but you can take
Okay.
as much time as you want.
This is gonna, it's not a little biased, but I think the secretariat might have influenced me the most. I know that one of the committees that the undergraduate trustee sits on is the only committee that the Board of Trustee oversees that the undergraduate trustee sits on is the Audit and Risk Committee. And this committee essentially does a few things, but for those who don't know, it monitors the financial reporting processes to ensure transparency, and it monitors the non-academic misconduct system, as well as the effectiveness of internal control and risk management at Queen's. And essentially, I think that something that I'd really like to kind of vouch for, or kind of, I guess, explore on this committee is looking at peer conflict resolution. And so I guess this is where my consultation with the secretariat ties in, because some of the things that we were kind of exploring is how would, I guess, maybe the integration of peer conflict resolution might yield more productive results when it comes to non-academic conflict resolution. So peer conflict resolution has been shown to be more effective than traditional conflict resolution methods, because it creates kind of a more comfortable environment in order to have more productive conversations, which might lead to more long-lasting solutions when it comes to conflict resolution. So, for example, what would that look like? Maybe if we had a call line to allow for students to call the Queen's student constables if there were, for example, like low-intensity cases. So this would allow for peer conflict resolution to be integrated more into the community, and it might lead to sort of more fruitful results in terms of conflict resolution in that area. So yes, that is what I would do.
Great, thank you so much. The next question is, what is your position on the police presence on campus, especially around homecoming?
Right, so I think this has a lot to do with the health and safety of students on campus. There's actually a few policies that the Board of Trustees oversee that have to do with health and policy, and the first one, just for everyone's knowledge, is the policy statement on health and safety, and there's also the health and safety management system. And both of these policies aim to prevent the injury and illness at Queens and for Queens students, and they also protect members by kind of they just protect members. And so to answer your question of what I would do is I would really try to implement these policies and ensure that all Queens students are protected. Again, like in my role as undergraduate trustee, the health and safety of students is something that is very much on the top of my priority list. In the past, I have been on health and safety committees, and my position did involve kind of relaying health and safety concerns from my coworkers, for example, to the committees and trying to find fruitful solutions and the best way to protect the health and safety of my peers. And so in this case, I'd probably follow a similar structure and try to find, I guess, the best ways to protect students during homecoming and make sure that their health and safety needs are best met.
Great. Our next question is about inclusion and diversity. We know these pillars are important to us at Queens without a doubt. Can you discuss how you have already engaged in meaningful activism for marginalized students during your time at Queens?
For sure. This is a very great question. I care very much about EDIA in the community. I'm from the Middle East originally, so I can very much sympathize with students who might at times feel out of place or feel that they're not being included in their environment. And again, as undergraduate trustee, this is something that I very much care about, and I'm willing to hear all students that I guess are dealing with this. As to answer is what I've currently done, I'm actually currently the co-chair of the Mental Health Awareness Committee, and I've talked with a lot of people here about it, but I'm hoping to run a cultural market in collaboration with the as many cultural clubs as at Queens that are willing to join. And so that's one of the things that I've been working on the side of this. I will say it's been a hassle trying to find a room. I don't know how you did it in here, but yeah, that's one of the things that I've been working on, and I'm very excited. It's going to be hopefully mid-March, so you all should come.
That sounds great. Thank you. So as a member of the Audit and Risk Committee, how do you plan on advocating for the best interest of students?
Yeah, so I think I might have already touched a little bit on what my answer is for this one. It really goes back to how much I value peer conflict resolution and how much I think that would be a great thing to look into. I've already mentioned my idea on the Queens Student Constables, but perhaps another thing that might be interesting to look into is allowing the Internal Affairs Office at the AMS to perhaps deal with some of the lower level L2 cases. Again, because I feel like peer conflict resolution has been shown to yield more productive results, and because it is able to create a more welcoming and friendly environment for discussion and conflict resolution. But yes, I guess another thing I'd also do on that committee is I think that it's very important. This kind of ties back with one of my pillars, which is keeping students informed on the board and such, but I guess is relaying back to students as much as I can, whatever's not non-confidential, and keeping them updated on what's going on in these committee meetings and in the Board of Trustee meetings as well, so that they may stay informed.
Awesome, thank you. What are you most excited about accomplishing this term, during your term?
I think one of my main goals is really to create meaningful connections with the AMS executives, whoever wins, as well as the senior managers whenever they get hired, and the faculty society heads. I think that creating these really meaningful connections is going to be really exciting for me because I've already met so many lovely people in the AMS, but it's also going to kind of give us the opportunity to collaborate and work on some really meaningful projects. One project that I really enjoyed learning about was some of the things that the Human Resource Center are doing, for example. I know that they did the holiday house check that I think is a really great initiative, and to help kind of check houses for any signs of break-ins over the winter. But I know that another project that they're currently working on is to assess houses for fraud over the summer. And this is especially important for international students, for example, who might not be here to check their houses. So I think that that's a really great project that I'd be really happy to work with whoever the Housing Resource Center manager is next year. And yeah, so I think the thing that I'm most excited on is collaborating on really meaningful and impactful projects.
Very nice. What is your stance on advocating for students, even when it may not be popular to the university or city? How do we know you will be on student side when it comes to points of tension?
For sure. I think the undergraduate trustee's role really focuses on being an advocate and a voice for students. I recognize that maybe specifically on Board of Trustee meetings, I'm going to be surrounded with a lot of people who have different goals than me. However, I recognize that in my role as undergraduate trustee, my main goal is to be representative for students and to be their voice. And so I'll really make sure to continue doing that, no matter what maybe those around me are trying to convey instead. But yeah, I guess that's all.
The Board of Trustees oversees 6 standing committees. How do you plan on using your role to advocate for undergraduate students at these committee meetings?
I have a runny nose. Yeah, so of the 6 committees, I'm the only one that the undergraduate trustee sits on is the Audit and Risk Committee, and I've already shared my thoughts on that one. For the other 5, I have consulted with a few other people, and the consensus that I've gained is that there's not really much the undergraduate trustee can do on the other 5, given that they're not really an acting member. But is that me? Okay. Okay, it's fine. But I know the undergrad trustee is able to sit in on those committee meetings, so I think something that'd be interested in is sitting on them and just learning more about what's going on.
Great, thank you. This may be our last question, but it's a fun one. Imagine you are the undergraduate trustee and you met a genie who could grant you 3 wishes. What would you ask for?
Oh no, this is so hard because all I want to say is like, get me into med school. But if I was the undergraduate trustee, let me think. If I was a graduate trustee. I think the first thing I'd make sure is, or I guess I would ask, is for all students to feel, I guess, comfortable in their learning environment and supported by their peers so that they can accomplish all the goals that they would like to accomplish at their time here at Queen's. So that's number 1. Number 2, let's do an environmental sustainability one. I'd wish for Queens, I guess the entire world to be living in a really safe, loving environment that is healthy and sustainable. And the third one, I can see the timer running out, so I have to think fast. You know what? I'll just wish to make it into med school. We'll go with that one for the sake of time.
Thank you, Reem, so much. Okay, that was awesome. Thank you, Reem. I just forgot to mention this in the introduction, but if anyone in the audience or watching online has any concerns about the comments made here tonight, the election process, or the candidates, please feel free to email secretariat@ams.queensu.ca. With that being said, we'll now introduce our executive candidates. So they each have 2 minutes to introduce themselves, and we'll go Team ERA, KMV, and TBD. So ERA, whenever you're ready.
Awesome. Thank you, Caroline. Hello, everyone. It's so great to see so many students attending, whether you're Oh, okay. Sorry. Hi, everyone. I'll restart. Hi, everyone. So lovely to see all of you attending in person or online. We truly do appreciate every single one of you. For those of you that don't know, my name is Elizabeth McCard. Some call me Liz. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm in my 4th year of political studies. I'm super passionate about community and helping others, and I'm very excited to apply my 3 years of student government to the position of the Vice President of Operations.
Thank you, Liz. Hello, everyone. If you don't know me, my name is Ryan Chen. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm a 4th year kinesiology student. I have plenty of experiences all around campus, and that's honestly been the highlight of my undergraduate experience so far, just meeting all the lovely people I meet in student government and clubs and things like that. And so for tonight, I'm looking forward to this debate, and I'm running to be the I'm the presidential candidate for Team ERA.
Amazing. And hello, my name is Alicia, and I'm in my 3rd year of Life Sciences and Health Studies, and I'm running to be your next Vice President of University Affairs. And I've been involved in student government and student affairs at the university since my 1st year here at Queen's. And I'm really passionate about advocating for student needs and creating community here at Queen's. And as Team ERA, we came together over shared values of removing barriers, easing access, and building a more welcoming community here at Queen's. These values have been molded through over 100 consultations with your peers, student leaders, club executives, friends, and university faculty and staff. And we're excited to build this platform with you throughout the year on revitalizing community, increasing financial accessibility, and improving wellness.
As Team ERA, we believe one of our strongest strengths as a team is the fact that we have a long and diverse list of experiences that gives us a lot of ability to draw from and be able to think on. Thank you.
Thank you, Team ERA. We're not going to clap. We'll clap at the end after they introduce themselves. Okay, Team KMV, please feel free to begin.
Hello, everyone. Thank you again so much for coming down here. We're Team KMV. My name is Kate. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm in my 4th year of a political studies degree. My background in student leadership really does kind of encompass a lot of different skills, so I'll kind of break it down as much as I can. But my most recent role, I was the head Gale of Arts and Science Orientation Week, which is the largest student-run orientation in the country. Through that, I really got to develop my love of running large teams and also kind of dipping my hands into a lot of things and seeing what I can do to support my fellow student run and kind of see their own dreams come to fruition. In addition to that, I also got to work with these wonderful 2 individuals here with me where we got to develop, honestly, such a level of trust that really made us feel prepared to take on any challenge presented towards us. As we went through this process and running through AMS Exec, we really knew that we could take on anything and there was nothing that anyone could throw at us that we didn't feel confident enough to take on together as a team, and that's where our team's strengths, values really do lie. I am running as the presidential candidate, and I'll pass it off to Michelle.
All right, thank you, Kate. Hello, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well and the wind wasn't, too bad on the way in while everyone's here. So I'm so glad everyone could make it all safe and happy and sound. So as Kate said, hi, everyone. My name is Michelle. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm currently in my 4th year of biopsych. Time flies quite quickly. So a little bit about me, like Kate mentioned, I was on ASS orientation with these 2 lovely individuals. There I worked as a team to create some amazing events that bridge the community gap, such as sidewalk sale, such as Queens in the Park with our Axe Chair Ariel, who unfortunately isn't here right now, but shout out to her. I guess a little bit more background is I currently do work internally for the AMS as part of WACOM, an amazing student service that kind of serves the community and I guess the King's community and abroad, just to kind of give students a safe way to get home and just either make friends or just have a good time and feel safe walking home. And in addition to that, I've been a part of a couple of Queens clubs during my time here, Women in International Security, Queens Pre-Health Shadowing Society, but not to bore you with all that. I also
All right, thank you, Team KMV. Your 2 minutes has elapsed. All right, we'll move on to Team TVD next. Thank you.
Alrighty. Hello, everyone, and thank you for having us here tonight. My name is Ben Burton. I'm in 4th year sociology, and I will be running for Vice President of Operations. Here at Team TBD, we stand for unity and unifying the Queens community, and we developed pillars to guide us on that journey. And these pillars are student engagement, fostering community, equity, accountability and transparency, and a working environment. I'll pass it off to Dante now.
Thank you. Hey, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to come out to this debate. I'm Dante Kaloya. I'm a fourth-year politics student, and I'm going to be running for Vice President of University Affairs. I've never actually been in the AMS before, but I feel like I can kind of take an outside look. My time at Queen's has been amazing, but it's also not been perfect. I feel like there's a lot that we can fix, a lot that we can work with. And honestly, I'm just really ready to be a facilitator for others, and I'm super excited and ready to learn from student bodies outside of the AMS about how we can make it the best we can.
Hey guys, my name is Thomas. I use he, him pronouns. I'm running as a presidential candidate for this year. These guys already explained it pretty perfectly. We're here to try and unite the Queens community. I feel very passionate about advocating for students. At the end of the day, if we're elected, we work for you. And at the end of the day, we're all here very passionate. We care about the problems that Queens has, and we want to try and help fix them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to take a 10-minute intermission. So feel free to stretch your legs, get some water, and we'll resume in 10 minutes. their seats. Okay, so we're going to begin with our questions for the Vice President Undergraduate Affairs candidates. And we have a specific order that's been randomized, which our candidates know. So the first question for all of these candidates is, having had consultations with key stakeholders surrounding the event planning and approvals process, formerly called event sanctioning, what have you learned and how will your team plan on improving this process? So we'll start with Victoria from KMV.
Yeah. I think throughout the consultation process, we really got to look at this from many different angles, not only from clubs who go through this event sanctioning process, but even external kind of entities such as orientation, who go through a much more daunting and a much longer process in this kind of whole scenario. So we've been able to kind of look at this from all angles. The one thing we've noticed is it seems as though CAC has an extreme workload that's not only kind of increased since post-pandemic, but also since we kind of see more activity on campus, and we see more engagement on campus, which is something great to see, but it's not exactly something I think we have the capacity to kind of accommodate for the volume right now. So with our platform and with these kind of consultations, we did kind of see that key piece of, there are a lot longer wait times and people are losing thousands of dollars based on the fact your event form might not be returned to you until after your event was supposed to take place, which in and of itself is not accessible. It's not equitable. It's just frankly not fair. So during our platform, we really tried to kind of determine a way in which we could kind of mitigate these sort of downstream effects. So I think our meeting with Engineering Society was one of the most pertinent ones. And they suggested to us a triage system, which is what we implemented in the platform. And that kind of includes the role of the creation of the Deputy of Campus, or Commissioner of Campus Affairs events, and it's a triage process. So you look through kind of these events for someone who's trained. It's a stoplight system. There's green, there's yellow, there's red. If it's green, this is something that CAC is going to be able to approve in a couple minutes, and it's great, it's done. Yellow, there are some things you might want to edit.
Okay,
maybe
thank you. Sorry, our time has elapsed for that. We will move on to Alicia from Team ERA.
Amazing. Yeah, this is something that came up in a lot of consultations with clubs, with faculty societies, and also within the AMS as well, because it is a high friction point. It's one of the number one ways that clubs are interacting with the AMS, and so we really want to make sure that it's something that's building positive relationships and not breaking them down. And so what we've looked at here came out of, again, I would say engineering also had strong thoughts, which was incredibly helpful, as well as meeting with IT at the AMS, as well as with Nikki and Callum. And what's come out of that is that the AMS team currently has already put in plans to have a new AM next year, and so that will take the load off of the incoming commissioner, which I think will be a great first step. Also, we're looking into, and again, this is something that is already kind of in the early stages, but a ticketing system, because CAC used to be about advocacy, and I think that's what's really important about that commission and that portfolio. And so we'd love to see them get back to advocating, and by taking the load off, by having it a tech kind of, techie, using IT, I think that'll be really incredible for the portfolio. And then going forward as well, I think it's also important, like KMV mentioned, with orientation as well. It's just really important that I think we're just removing all the barriers it takes to fill out these forms. And so I agree that triaging can be effective, but I think if we can be doing that through the ticketing system, it'll be a little bit better, because that'll allow people to not have to go back and forth with these emails, be able to check in with the status without having to be on a thread.
Thank you. Okay, and TBD, Dante.
Similar to Team ERA, when we did our consultation with the Commissioner of Campus Affairs, we learned that they needed a new position under them to focus strictly on event planning, to kind of take some of the load off of that position. And I think that would kind of just help put more focus on individual events, stop backups, and also just let the process be more streamlined.
All right, excellent. And we'll begin the rebuttal process back with Team KMV.
Okay, I totally agree with ERA to the point where a ticketing system is really important. A lot of people have gone through this process with submitting a form, not necessarily know where it's going, and a lot of the times you'll get this form back, won't get feedback, and then kind of need to go through this whole thing again with the approximate wait time. But we don't exactly think that that may be an all-encompassing solution. One of the things we really want to focus on is education. A lot of people fill out these forms. They're very daunting. They're very long. You need a tutorial about how to do it, how to do it properly. So you're mitigating the back and forth, which we think is something completely integral. Say that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I totally agree. But I would argue that we want a system easy enough that you don't need a tutorial. And so what this looks like, I think it's a platform that is more collaborative so that more than one person can be working on it once, because a lot of clubs have event committees. I know in my role as academics commissioner, lots of DSCs are trying to work on it together. So we'd like to see something that A, is collaborative, and B, you can save as you go. Form stack, you close your computer and all your hard work completely gone. Heartbreaking. And so we'd really love to see that as well. And then again, with the ticketing system, I think also the ability to go back in and check like how your status is. And I think that'll take load off of CAC, which will be really, really important, and allow them a little bit of an easier process to sift through applications. And then on the student side, I hope it just puts a little bit more time into people's days, because as we go back to in-person, event planning is just a huge burden. And I think will allow students to have ease of access when planning their events.
Thank you.
I think honestly what the other teams have proposed is great. I guess the one criticism I would have is that the system is already kind of backed up and a little bit complicated. So I think that adding a triage system is kind of like, it could potentially add to something that's already backed up. So I think the simpler the better. Something that we could propose like differently is we could create like a tutorial on how clubs can fill out their forms, because I know that that was something that was mentioned that was a difficulty. But I honestly think just a new position is the main thing to focus on.
Okay, great. We will move on to our second question for our VPUA candidates, and that is, as Vice President of University Affairs, you will be responsible for being a steering committee member on OSA, the Ontario University Student Alliance, representing post-secondary students all across Ontario. In your opinion, what do you think the biggest issue facing post-secondary students is today, and how would you lobby this to a member of provincial parliament as a student? We'll start once again with Team KMB.
In terms of this important issue, I'm going to go with accessibility, because I think the landscape of how student study has really changed over the past few years, and I think we can all attest to that. Not only did we go from a fully in-person model to a kind of online model and then to a hybrid model, and a lot has changed. And the way in which students learn, I feel like is something that university administration and facilitators have not caught up with. We speak a lot about the new post-secondary education standards that are coming out with the AODA. That encompasses a lot about online learning, as well as like getting pretty much campus to the standards at which it used to be, but really should be striving to be. So I think that in lobbying with the passing of this legislation, that should hopefully kind of coincide in terms of timing. There are a bunch of recommendations that are going through right now that essentially encompass kind of all areas of accessibility when it comes to financial accessibility. You know, we're all students, we all pay tuition, and housing prices are increasing, grocery prices are increasing, gas prices are increasing, and it's really kind of hard to keep up with that. Or you look at online classes, and you know what, a lot of your lecture videos don't have transcripts. They don't have a playback speed in which you could adjust, which really kind of mitigates the amount you can learn from it. There are different recommendations when it goes to textbooks and having those be accessible, whether that be an online format, whether that be the kind of hard copy, and having those kind of options available to you. So I think to a member of parliament, it's really speaking to the student experience, and I do not speak for all students, so getting kind of as much input as I possibly can, because at the end of the day, I want to be as well educated as possible.
Thank you. You're right, go ahead.
Phenomenal. I think this is an incredible opportunity for students to partake in larger advocacy work. And I think it's really important because there's a lot that students can do to change that stuff at Queen's, but a lot of the barriers come from above. It comes from governmental legislation. And something that's really important is your tuition. And so how the university is funded, to simplify it down, there's about 3 different sectors. So there's donations through alumni and that sort of thing. But the 2 main factors that depend on you are your tuition and the grants that come in with the university when you come to Queen's. And the tuition has been rising. There's a cap, but there has been a call for that cap to remove, which means students will be paying more. But aside from the government, the grants have not increased with inflation since 1960s. That's something that came out of our consultation with Patrick Dean. And so we want to be advocating to make sure that there's more funding coming from the government side, so that when the university has to fund projects like getting a new building for nursing or improving accessibility on campus, that money needs to come from somewhere, and we don't want it to come from you. We want it to come from the government, so that it's not putting more tuition pressure on students. Oh, and I have 30 seconds left. Okay, second point. I also think healthcare. I know that USA is a great body to advocate for things within student life as well. But I think another huge issue that's affecting students right now is wellness. It's really hard to get in with a doctor. And it is a university issue, and it's something we've already met with student wellness about. But I also think we can be advocating at the governmental level because there is a healthcare crisis across the province. And so I think also advocating there to make sure that we're getting the support students need on campus in order to reach the physicians they need.
Thank you. And we'll go back to Team TBD.
I think for me with universities and issues that post-secondary students face, I think the most important is equity and representation. I think the university should be for everyone. And I think kind of like the three ways that this is doable is through like committees, at least at Queen's, there's CARE, Equip, and AQ. I think other universities also have different ones. Also through more equity-focused scholarships and grants, and also through the promotion of equity and cultural-based clubs. And something that you could lobby to the government about is basically more funding for equity and inclusivity-based initiatives.
Thank you. Okay, and we will begin the rebuttal process for that second question. I did it a little wrong the first time, but we actually are going to start with Team TBD now for the rebuttal. You have 60 seconds.
I think that I think that like subsidies and kind of making things more affordable is definitely really necessary. But I think that that can go hand in hand with equity and representation. And ultimately, I think that that should be the priority.
Yeah, I agree that I think all the points brought up so far were really great as well. I think it's really important to be advocating for equity and accessibility in every single room that we can sit in. And it's a huge privilege to be AMS executive. And it's really important to be speaking on behalf of students. But I also want to take the opportunity, since I've got a few seconds as well, to say that this is an opportunity to really throw your support as well behind the commissioner. And that's something that I think we're really excited about being AMS executive as well, is getting to kind of take on other people's dreams and visions for their roles. And this is a huge part of the Commissioner of External Affairs portfolio. And we're really excited to also see what advocacy initiatives and what they're looking to take to the provincial legislation level as well, because that's a really exciting opportunity to support AMS employees as well.
I'll definitely agree with a lot of the points that were made before me. There is a mental health crisis. There is a health crisis. Accessibility is a really big issue. Equity, diversity, and representation is a really massive issue. And when we were consulting, we were talking to the Social Issues Commissioner, both internal and external. One of the large things that they mentioned, and this can trickle down from a governmental level, is getting into high schools. A lot of people enter university. You're an adult. I guess for the first time, you're away from your parents or your loved ones, and you don't understand these really complicated systems. And where the Ontario education system at the high school level is failing is it's not educating them at that level to then bring forth that education to really understand the scope of what is about there to get into. And that's educating them about bursaries. It's educating them about equity, deserving groups and spaces on campus. It's educating them about mental health resources and physical health resources, and those all encompassing at your respective institution. And that can start at the university fair. That can start from a governmental level. That can start from, integrating that curriculum into high schools, because that's needed and it's not present.
Thank you so much. And if you want to give your closing statement, Team KMV, that would be great.
So I suppose in the role of VPUA, it is really important that we're escalating these issues, not only from the kind of post-secondary sort of viewpoint, but even just as an average university student. I'm going to be in the very fortunate position to be very well educated about my respective institution and be very cognizant of my role in this. And with having that responsibility and that onus and that privilege to speak for all students, I think it's on me to truly educate myself about what it is, the burdens, and what it is kind of important to everyone around me, and to understand the avenues in which I can, bring that up to bodies that can enact more change than I suppose I could at my level, and truly integrate my thoughts and ideas into those processes to respect and represent the people that I value most and who elected me into this position, and kind of change with the times as they kind of come and go.
Thank you. Alicia.
Can I have a point of information first? Okay, amazing. So our vision for the Queen's community is one that values, supports, and uplifts all students. So whether you're an AMS senior management member, a club volunteer, or someone who has never engaged with the AMS before, this means a community that is accessible and prioritizes indigenization, equity, diversity, inclusion, and anti-racism. We will be improving our supports for clubs and students alike by providing greater benefits financially and resource-wise. And I also want to touch on finances a little bit because we really do want to put the money back into advocacy, whether that's putting grants to fund equity, labor and equity labor, as well as just improving. The AMS gave out almost $300,000 in bursaries last year, but so many students still aren't aware. And so we're really, really excited to kind of put the money back into advocacy work and help support students.
Thank you.
So for those of you who don't really know how the AMS works, the VPUA has 5 commissions that they oversee, and I'm honestly most excited to work with the Social Issues Commission and kind of spearhead what's going on with clubs. Ultimately, I want to tell you guys what my actionable items are, what I would actually do in this position. And I think clubs are kind of the lifeblood of Queens. They bring people together. They provide safe spaces for those who get discriminated against, for those who experience hate. Some things that I really want to do is basically work with the SIC to hold bi-monthly anti-discrimination and anti-hate meetings that clubs and just the open student body can come to provide a safe space for people to bounce ideas off each other, to share what they've gone through, to provide new ideas. I also just really want to bring clubs together so that they can kind of meet more often, also in like informal spaces. Not everything has to be formal, not everything has to be over email. You can utilize kind of like the human side of life to kind of make things just make things generally more human so that people can feel like they can open up and actually look to you, not as just a leader, but as a facilitator to speak your piece.
Thank you, VPUA candidates. Okay, so we're going to be moving on to our debate period for the Vice President of Operations position. The first question I have for you is, as Vice President of Operations, you are tasked with the financial aspect of the corporation, which is a $20 million budget. Your duties include providing and presenting the AMS consolidated budget to the AMS board and the corporate general special meeting, chairing the student activity fee committee, and completing the student activity fee audit. What will your approach be to manage this aspect of your portfolio? We'll begin with Team ERA.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Obviously, the budget is a large portion of the Vice President of Operations portfolio. And a lot of that portfolio and a lot of that budget does come from the services that we work within. So whether it's Tricolor, StuCons, CoGrow, Walk Home, the PNCC, Studio Q, all 9 of the services get to contribute to the budget and make up that $20 million. And I think another large portion of that, Alicia briefly touched on it, is the advocacy work. And, you know, one of our goals is putting the money back into students' pockets. Over the years, we've noticed there is a decline from the SIC budget in terms of awards and that sort of thing for equity work. And I think that's something that we really want to continue to improve and increase. And I think that definitely plays a role in the budget as well. In terms of the approach to how presenting at these, I guess, the meeting and everything, just taking into consideration all of my team's inputs and as well as their budget and supporting them along the way and truly helping them to achieve their goals and that sort of thing. But thank you.
Thank you, and we'll go to Ben of Team TBD.
Thank you. So obviously, like Elizabeth said, it's a large budget. There's no easy approach to sort of think about how to spend it. But my personal approach would be to communicate with as many people as possible to sort of allocate those funds. I think it would be arrogant for me to think that I know where all of that money should go. So really communicating with my team members, all the different service head managers, and really all of the permanent staff as well, because they've obviously been here a lot longer than any of us have, would be my approach. Discuss with as many people as we can and really see where that money could be distributed and used well. Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll go to Michelle, KMB.
All right, hello again, everybody. So I think all great points were really made, and I think it's incredibly important to, just to be, first of all, in the honor of this role and to be able to, have such an impact, kind of going into, I guess, financial literacy and financial transparency, something I feel is so incredibly important because, as said, $20 million of student funds, students should know where they're going. So with that, I would love to be very transparent about where your money's going, what is opt-in, what is opt-out, where is your money going within budgets, releasing budgets early, and just kind of having students be able to look and go, yes, that is where my money is going. Yes, that is where I'm excited that my money is going as well. And kind of with that vein, it's just financial literacy. I think it's incredibly important for students to be able to read the budget at a level that they understand and that they know where their money is going to. And I just think it would be amazing if we are able to kind of utilize and just make it very readable and very accessible to everyone.
Thank you. And if you want to stay standing for your rebuttal, that would be great. Thank you. You have 60 seconds.
Oh, okay, amazing. So basically with this, I believe that the student body, kind of continuing my vein, should be aware of when you're releasing the budget and what to do. I think it's really important for transparency just because some of the lovely managers at CoGrow, this is the first year that they're, not losing money and in a deficit. I think it's really important to just be transparent about this and just managing the portfolio as well. I really agree with TBD's point of you have a team, utilize them. There's such amazing people and such passionate people behind student government. You should utilize them to as much as you can, because at the end of the day, Team TBD is also right. I can't pretend I know everything going on in student body, student government, but I can listen to others, incorporate their voices, and also lift them up so they can also make informed decisions, and we can all make informed decisions together.
Thank you. And Ben, your rebuttal.
Thank you. I definitely agree with a lot of things that KMV said. Transparency is very important for our team, which is why we would like to make the consolidated budget very easy for students to access. It was very hard for me to view the 2023 budget, but I did eventually get to see it. And even still, it's still a little confusing. You don't really know exactly where the money goes. It's only like 2.5 pages long. And I think students should be able to know a little bit more about where their money is going. Speaking on that as well, in terms of deficits, obviously we're not a profit organization, but I would definitely love to work with the different services to try to decrease those deficits. One of them is CoGrow. The reason they are likely running a deficit is because they do not adjust their costs with inflation. So trying to keep things affordable for the students, which is something I personally really agree with. But I think there's always room for improvement, of course. Thank you.
Thank you. And Elizabeth.
Yeah, thank you. I think transparency is definitely a key thing, especially when talking about students' money. And I think Assembly plays a huge role in this. And, being transparent with the faculty societies and making sure the faculty societies do have the support that they need to serve the student body, because that's what their role is. And in a lot of our consultations, we learned that a lot of the online students, whether it's through health sciences or arts and science, they actually aren't able to opt into these fees and contribute to that budget. So I think it's super important to continue these conversations and allow the students who are online to have the opportunity to get the same benefits that they would, that a normal on-campus student receive. And I think that comes in line with the transparency with faculty societies and working in collaboration with faculty societies to serve the students so they can do what they do best, which is, serving the student body. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to our next question, which is services receive funding in 3 separate models: fully student activity fee-based, fully revenue-based, and mixed funding of revenue and student activity fees. What changes, if any, would you make to the funding models of the services? And once again, we'll start with Team ERA. Elizabeth.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I think a goal of ours is definitely, as we've mentioned, financial accessibility and putting that money back into students' pockets. So if there's any way to, reduce the cost that students are paying within their activity fees would be great. But again, I think that comes from the executive positions, and we are so privileged to be in these executive roles. And I think it's on us to, again, lobby at the government for more increased grants, since it hasn't been improved since 1960. I think that's kind of insane because inflation goes up for everything else. So I think it is on the executives to kind of advocate on behalf of the students to lower those activity fees and be able to receive more grants from the government and put that money back into students' pockets, whether it's through, again, paying equity work or reducing costs on campus for food and all that stuff. We know there is a food insecurity crisis as well as a housing crisis, and I think the food bank is a great source for the food insecurity issue, and I'm really excited to see that fee hopefully get passed in referendum, but I definitely think reducing those activity fees is where I would make some changes. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll go to Ben, TBD.
So there's not really many changes I would make with the way the funding model works, but something I would like to see is more money going towards commissions and especially into clubs. because like my colleague Dante said, clubs and events are really the lifeblood of the student experience. And I think we can all agree that student experience has been lacking a little bit, especially since coming back from COVID. So I would like to see a little bit more funding get directed into those avenues. Thank you.
Thank you. And Michelle, your turn.
All right. So I guess something that I believe that would be really amazing is sticking with the theme of transparency and exactly what this funding is for, and for also student input on this as well. I think part of the AMS is serving the community and serving Kingston, so they should have a direct say in where their money goes. And I guess more on this vein is, I guess, efficient distribution of information. Like I said previously, students need to know, and the onus is on university administration to help advocate for a tuition cap. There's only so much that, as students, that we can do. We can make our voices heard as much, but I think we need to advocate all together collectively and work together beyond the AMS, beyond just student government, and all work together in order to do that. And kind of on that vein, things have definitely changed since the pandemic ended. So I think it's really important to just reanalyze everything, see what works, see what doesn't work, and just kind of build from there. CoGrow completely changed the system, and they're doing amazing now, and to the part where they're not in a deficit anymore. And I say, let's look at that. Let's standardize processes like that. That is basically just help change things overall. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that.
Great. And please, I'm going to ask you to stand up again for your 60-second rebuttal. Thank you.
All right, amazing. Me again. So with this, I think it's really important. I guess I'll speak more to the health and dental plan. I really want to take a different approach and different look at this, as well as include online students as well. Unfortunately, a lot of arts and science online students, health sciences online students, can't necessarily use the AMS fee, something that is important for students because some of them are on campus, many of them are on campus, and we've changed the way that we've completely distributed and confined or defined online students and in-person students. So I guess speaking to kind of that vein is just being able to find a long-term solution and a solution right now. What can we do to help those students, especially in, for example, the ARC? If someone wants to go work out, let's find out a way to even just kind of have a temporary fee that they can pay and opt into currently. So I guess kind of on that vein, looking to current solutions, what we can do right now, and then what we can do, I guess, along the time and pave the way for the next executive team, whoever does get elected.
Thank you. And Ben, back to you.
Thank you. Elizabeth mentioned advocating to reduce student fees, which of course is not a bad idea, but of course as well, money needs to come from somewhere. So that's definitely not the approach I would take. I'm not saying I would raise the student fee, but I definitely don't think I would lower it. Additionally, according to the 2023 budget, CoGrow is in a deficit. So that's all I have to say on that.
Thank you. And we'll go to Team ERA, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Yeah, I think when talking about money and activity fees and that sort of thing, it is still important to consider that the AMS is a corporation and still consider the corporate side of it. But working with the permanent staff and other AMS executives, as well as the student body, and getting their input on where they want to see the money go and putting it back into their pockets. And I think Tina's done a great job this year as Vice President of Operations, and we can, build and learn from this progress and keep, instead of reinventing the wheel, just keep building on it. I also think it's really interesting to note, based off the 2023 budget, that the offices actually had an increase of, I think, 3.5 million or 2.5 million. So they're over 5 million, whereas the commissioners were about 3 million. And I think that is something that we definitely want to kind of change and, put that money back into the advocacy work. I think the current team at the AMS has done a great job in terms of rebranding out of COVID within the offices. But I definitely think now that they've kind of built up the name and the reputation of the AMS, it is time to kind of put that money back into advocacy work. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, we'll just have our closing statements from each candidate. So again, Elizabeth, that will be you. Go for it.
Awesome. Thank you. I think funding is a very interesting topic as well, because I think it varies across all the services. And I think, the bigger services have an opportunity to help out the smaller service that might not have as much funding or as much interaction with the student body. CoGrow and Tricolor, with all my, within all the consultations, they don't really have to market. It's like an everyday thing. It's a part of someone's daily life. You're going to go to CoGrow in the morning, you're going to go study and grab your lunch. But I think those services can definitely help play a role with, the smaller services and helping them build up that strong foundation.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Ben, your closing statement.
Thank you. Obviously, very excited to be here today. It's a lot of money to spend, and it will be very interesting to see where that money goes. I know I don't have a lot of time, so I'll make this pretty brief. There's a lot of services for me to work with and manage, but the one that I'm probably most excited to work with is the food bank, and I would just like to share a couple of my ideas on that. The first idea I have is to involve health studies faculty or students into the food bank to develop a comprehensive shopping list for the food bank. Grocery costs are getting pretty out of hand these days, and it's important that the food bank is stocked and also has a comprehensive list of groceries that are very nutritious for the human body, because obviously people who are food insecure probably aren't meeting the recommended daily intakes for a lot of foods. So that's very important to me. Additionally, we'd like to increase food drives for the food bank to also ensure that they are reasonably stocked. We've heard from some people that the food bank previously, it would be like one.
Thank you, Ben. Thanks. And Michelle, we'll go to you.
All right, so I'll kind of keep within the same theme of financial transparency is so important for students. What, $20+ million of student funds? Students should know where their money goes. They should be able to see where it goes and be proud of it. And also, I would love to just take a look at different funding requirements for different entities on campus. I don't want to take this from a one-size-fits-all approach. Different services have different needs. Different clubs have different needs. And also looking at, I guess, how we can all support each other to kind of bring that student life back. For example, clubs on campus, a lot of them sometimes aren't able to book spaces on campus just because of the cost. So looking at that, see if we can allocate more there. And I feel as though, like I said again, each service needs its own approach to be looked at, see the amazing work that Tina's already done, build upon that, and just keep looking towards the future and build plans to continue using that money and just all together, just financial transparency, knowing where it goes. That's it for me.
Okay, let's give a round of applause for our VPOPs candidate. Okay, so we're actually going to take a quick break, so another 10-minute intermission. Stretch your legs and we'll Once again, so if everyone could take their seats, that would be excellent. Okay, so to resume, we will begin with our presidential candidate debates. So for our presidential candidates, here's your first question. How do you plan to accomplish your goals where other presidents have tried and not succeeded? We will start with Team TBD. Thomas, go for it.
That's a good question, but a broad question. Honestly, I believe there's a lot more room for student advocacy. And I'm not saying that the past AMS execs in my position haven't done the work for student advocacy, but that's one of the areas that you can always improve on. At the end of the day, like I said in our introduction, we work for the student body, we're paid by the student body, and at the end of the day, we're supposed to voice their concerns to the school. My position would talk to the Senate, and by talking to the Senate, we talk to the school by voicing important concerns that students bring up to me. And even on that point, knowing that I should be going to the students. We always sit back and we say we have open office hours, you can come talk to us, but do students actually come and talk? Like, we have to go out and talk to them, find out what their problems are, and then take those problems and then advocate it to the school and to the government and whoever else that may be.
Okay, thank you. And we'll go to Team KMB. Kate.
Thank you so much. I think not only echoing those as well, but also I think communication is a key piece. As soon as you're thrust into this role, you're essentially handled a huge hiring timeline. And with that kind of hiring timeline in mind, it's efficient and also digestible communication as you hire, first of all, your senior management positions, which is a huge monumental task as soon as you enter into the role. This goes with clear job descriptions, clear payment, clear hours, and understanding that as you apply to the tasks and duties would apply to each event. In addition to that, transition is a huge deal. For instance, in past years, it's been really difficult to transition in and out roles, especially when you consider the fact that they've continually transitioned from online and person, and having the ability to fully transition each other into each role into different scenarios is incredibly difficult and to no fault of the actual participant themselves. Having a transition that's done month by month instead of at the end of positions is a key piece of our platform and something that we look forward to implementing uniquely to our campaign period itself. With that, people should be fully transitioned into these positions and feeling prepared to enter and not feeling kind of starting off a little discombobulated, not knowing entirely what's going on. And it's to no fault of the person before. It's just kind of the situations transitioning from here to here. And so now that we've moved more into this in-person comfortable format, it's having that continuity through that.
Thank you. And we'll go to Ryan of Team ERA.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to fully agree with all the points that have been said so far, especially on the point of transition. I think it's very important that when, once you are elected into this role, the first thing to do is kind of, push away that, definitely use your experiences and use all the knowledge you have, but kind of push it to the side for just a moment and kind of look at it a lens through being able to learn and listen first. And so the first thing I would hopefully do is be able to sit down and have a long conversation with the outgoing president of the AMS and really just try to learn from his perspective and really see what he has tried to accomplish, what doesn't work, what does work. Because the first thing is just kind of stripping away all the things I think I know and starting to learn all the things that I need to know. Also, in this role, there's a lot to do in a very little amount of time. I'm sure all of us feel the same way that, right now it's already February and we're already transitioning out of the roles we're in right now. And we feel like we just started yesterday. So it's not a lot of time. And so 1 year, we have to be realistic with our goals and properly plan them out and create timelines for them. But also just kind of build off of what the past AMS has already been doing and kind of build off that because that already has momentum and we can carry that through. Additionally, being realistic within our 1 year timeline, it's very easy for, university or the government or whoever else to kind of try to wait us out because, it's a 1 year term. They can push you off for a week, they can push you off for a month. And so really just being active in those conversations and really trying to push for what we want.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to ask you to give your rebuttal now. Thank you.
Yeah, so on the topic of continuing what we'd like to do, and essentially just what we achieving the things that maybe past executives haven't been able to achieve, I think it kind of stems to beyond just the presidential profile and making sure that we understand the entirety of the AMS. Mostly because as soon as we have that continuity and that understanding of all the different portfolios. As an AMS executive team as a whole, we can definitely be a lot more productive. And so I know even during our conversations of where we really see ourselves fitting in with AMS executive, all of us were talking about how we can see ourselves in this position or that position. Like any of us could have taken VP Ops, any of us could have taken VPUA. And I think that's one really big part, which is just really collaborating and really seeing where those portfolios overlap and where we can really use each other's experiences and rely on one another and learn from one another.
Thank you, and we'll go to Kate.
Thank you so much for all of those wonderful points. In addition to that, I think student burnout is huge in these massive kind of leadership positions, especially with those kind of concerning compassion fatigue. And it's respecting kind of those student leaders and understanding why are they feeling burnt out? Why are they feeling overwhelmed? Why are they not feeling great in their positions? That gives so much to the student community, especially in those kind of compassionate roles. In addition to that, hearing those student voices, not only in that sphere, but in all spheres, understanding kind of where the gaps are and knowing that when you've hired people, you've hired them for a reason to fulfill certain tasks and trusting their judgment, their calls, and understanding that it may disagree with you. And that's kind of a good thing. It's a good idea to have this debate, to go back and forth and to know kind of what's going on in each position. In addition to that, AMS information must be readily available to have that back and forth and to have that dialogue itself. So making sure that all student bodies know about what the AMS does and feels comfortable with what the AMS does.
Excellent, thank you. And Thomas.
To the point of transition, that's as much as I agree that transition does need work, and from an AMS position myself, I was kind of thrown into the judicial affairs manager position, not really knowing what I was supposed to do. I did get transitioned, but you learn along the way. But that's kind of the nature of how this works. We rehire everyone every year. It's a whole new workforce every year. And with that, there will always be gaps in knowledge. There will always be gaps in transition. And as much as I agree to that we can work on transition, how would that work month by month? Like, how would you ensure people are maintaining their transition manuals month by month? How are you going to stay on top of that? And just, again, to Ryan's point about how we have to work with the school, they can win us out. I agree. That's a tactic that Queens loves to use. But it's just ensuring that relationships with the school are strong or well, that they respect us and we respect them. So they don't feel like they have to resort to those tactics. They don't feel like they have to wait us out. They know that they can come talk to us and that we can talk to them. It's more of it's a conversation. They respect us, we respect them. They don't have to resort to those tactics. We both have the same objective of making sure our students.
Okay, so our next question is, according to the Kingstonist, Kingston residents need a living wage of $19.05 per hour to get by in our current economic climate. Given the capacity to either pay all your employees a livable wage or hire more staff to match the same rate, which would you choose? And we'll begin again with Thomas. Thank you.
That is a really tough question. And I'm going to be honest, I don't have the answer right now. That is quite ignorant for me to say. If I had to come up to you and make that decision right now, that is really ignorant for me to say. If I were to be elected into that position, I would have to sit down, I'd have to talk with my colleague Ben. We'd have to figure out what's more financially feasible, what can help the longevity of the AMS, what can help the students the most. If it's a living wage, we go with that. If it's hiring more people, we go with that. It's just getting into the position, figuring out what needs to be done, and then acting upon it. Again, for me to say I have an answer right now, I have to be truthful and honest. I don't, but when we're in that position, we make that choice and we come to that decision.
Okay, thank you. And Kate.
This is, of course, a very difficult answer, and this is something that I've kind of toyed back and forth with, especially as livable wage kind of becomes a greater conversation, especially with rising housing prices, rising grocery prices. There's even been shortages of lettuce recently, increasing lettuce prices. So with that kind of in mind, it's looking about how is your wage making your employees feel? At the end of the day, you need to take care of your current employees before you can take on more. You don't want people feeling undervalued, underpaid, underrespected. It kind of comes back to that kind of respect piece. So within that, looking at your permanent staff, see they can advise you on this matter, and making sure that the staff that you have itself are feeling supported, they're feeling welcome, they're feeling that their work is adequately valued in your society. If your employees feel undervalued, the entire society feels the brunt of it. So it's respecting that notion, feeling that satisfaction piece, but also relying on your permanent staff members who have been in business decades longer than I have, just by sheer factor of that. So with that kind of advice piece, it's listening to those around you, but also valuing your current employees before you take on any others.
Thank you. And we'll go to Ryan.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I fully agree. I definitely want to go back to the point that Thomas has made about being honest when you don't really know the answer. I think it's very important to not really jump on any topic and just immediately give an answer just to satisfy the need from someone asking, mostly because there can be a lot of consequences to that. So I believe that a lot of our strengths come with, researching, thinking, and coming back once we have a properly and fully informed answer. However, we do know that time is always of the essence. So along the way, we want to make sure that systems are in place to support those employees, and also like doing the research along the way. So, what are the current application numbers? Is there a need for those more jobs, right? Because I'm going to assume that the answer for every student is that they would like a higher wage, but we kind of have to look at the other side of the question being, is there a need for more jobs on campus? And really, what are those application numbers looking like? But again, even in those jobs that are already in place, just ensuring that those systems are being elevated and supported, because again, there's already turnover in certain areas where students kind of realize that this isn't the job they wanted. And so not only creating like well-paying jobs, but creating jobs that students really want to keep and students really enjoy.
Thank you. And your rebuttal, go ahead.
So, sorry, I wanted to go back and quickly touch on another point about the transition. I'm allowed to do that, right? Sorry. So, one thing I think is really important is that, yes, every single year there will always be gaps in knowledge and there will always be gaps in experience. And I think that's something that, every AMS executive team is always going to have to learn to live with. The fact that hundreds of positions are cycled over and over every single year will definitely leave a lot of gaps in knowledge. And so I think creating beneficial structures that ensure that year to year to year, you can have historical logs. So even things like event sanctioning, right? You can have tickets, but you can also look at the you can look at the past tickets as well and kind of look at your own history and kind of learn from past years, because there really is no better people to learn than those who are in that position.
Thank you. And we'll go to Kate.
Kind of echoing that as well, I'm going to kind of reflect back on the transition piece. Ensuring those kind of month-to-month check-ins is really integral. And the month-to-month check-ins does any task that you expect to be done on a month-to-month basis. It becomes a routine part of the job rather than something that is done at the end kind of position. At that point, students are burnt out and the student experience really does decrease when our effective leaders are made defective essentially by their burnout. And that's exhausting, and we really want to be respectful of that. So with that in mind, it becomes a monthly task. For instance, I know in many of the transition manuals that I've received and read over and greatly enjoyed, there's been a timeline provided. And that timeline needs to be provided on a month-to-month basis to be accurate as possible. I know it's unrealistic to expect students to remember what they've done all year by the very end of it, and they're exhausted. So with that in mind, it's keeping that month-to-month tasks and expectation as part of the monthly check-in, or more check-ins that you're kind of keeping up to base with if the task is expected rather than kind of pushed off to the side. So that's kind of my piece on that.
Thank you. And Thomas.
I kind of wanted to go back to the job aspect. As much as transition is important, I feel like that is more of a question for later if we are in the position figuring out how that might happen. Ryan, you raise a good point. We have to look at who's applying. And we can make a crazy ton of jobs. We can provide 2,000, 3,000 more jobs. But if no one's applying for those jobs, are we really creating more jobs? And with that, it raises the point of marketing the AMS. We always expect students to come to us, to apply to us, to ask us these questions. We have to find new ways. Although the AMS has done a great job marketing itself this year, we have to continue to find new ways to appeal to the students, to come out to them, to go to them. Because at the end of the day, when I am a normal student sitting down on a couch, I'm not going to go out and look for a job. The average student won't go out look for a job. We have to make them come to us. We have to advertise jobs. We have to advertise the benefits of working for the AMS and working for the student government.
Thank you. And I'll ask you to give your closing statement now. Thanks.
It's gonna go kind of off the cuff, but at the end of the day, I'm here for you. If elected, I will work for you. I will play for you. I will go to the end of the earth for you. It sounds cheesy. I thought of some Rocky. Slogan of "I'll go the 12 rounds," but like at the end of the day, the point I'm trying to get across is government's all about advocacy and working for the students, being for the students, and I'm not doing my job if I'm not working for you, helping you, and just providing the best student experience possible.
Thank you. And Kate, go ahead.
Well, I love the metaphors as well. Hats off to that. Kind of in mind with this vein of kind of what we've been talking about, especially in the presidential role, I think the most important thing that you can do is A, represent the students and ensuring that the students do that work for you with internally from the AMS as well, feel supported. It really is a student-run organization, and that brings so many different benefits and also so many different growth opportunities for students to learn how to, for instance, run marketing for a $20 million non-for-profit, with otherwise you wouldn't be given that opportunity. And so with that in mind, it's also voicing what other students and why aren't they getting involved in. It's okay that they're not getting involved, and what can the AMS do to serve you, especially in that kind of presidential role? And that's done through effective communication, and it's also digestible communication. The AMS can do an amazing job marketing its services, but also marketing where it can help you and its resources. So keeping that in mind and balancing those two back and forth while maintaining professionalism in both regards.
Thank you. And Ryan, your closing statement.
Amazing. I just wanted to open up and first of all say thank you and congratulations to the other teams as well. I personally feel that like amongst the three of us, there's no other students in the room who relate just as much to us as you six do. So again, I'm sure all the stress and all the campaigning and everything we've been going through, we know you guys have been pushing hard as well, and so we really admire you for that. One thing I did want to touch on, and this is something that I remember from my conversation with Lynn Perry, but Lynn Perry said that the AMS is a great opportunity to make mistakes and learn from them. And obviously that sounds a little cheesy, but I think it's definitely true. Like, you know, it's kind of like that last little bit, or at least for us, that'll be that last little bit before we kind of get pushed into that real world and we're kind of, you know, have everything thrown at us. So I just want to make that environment open to the entire student body as well, like where you can safely make mistakes and learn and grow from them. Thank you.
Thank you to all our presidential candidates. Okay, so we're now going to move into the Q&A, question and answer portion of the evening. Each of our teams will have 10 minutes in total to speak. So if you want to answer more questions, teams, you need to be quicker. But if you want to take your time answering fewer, that's all fine as well. Just depends on your strategy. Okay, so to begin, our first question is, why should we vote for you? And we'll start with ERA.
Yeah, absolutely. So one really large thing about Team ERA, one really big thing about Team ERA is that we really have a large and diverse background of experiences, from like, you know, working with athletes to working with student or orientation, as well as faculty societies, kind of being able to touch every corner of campus so far. We've been able to have a lot of consultations and really learn from a whole bunch of students. One really large thing that we focused on for our consultations is not just, you know, interviewing and talking to the heads of the AMS, but really also just talking to the students at large. And so if anyone's been to our booth, you've probably heard me say to you exactly like, you know, what's the largest thing that's slowing you down from getting that full Queens experience? And that's really what I want to learn, because oftentimes in a lot of these positions, we've already been very privileged to, you know, have that confidence and have that support to go for these positions in the AMS or in student societies and things like that. And so, you know, we want to make sure that every student is heard, regardless of whether, you know, they're in the ARC or whether they're on an online forum. So we want to make sure that like whatever means of communication is comfortable with you, like we want to hear it.
We yield the rest of our time.
Okay, and we'll move on to KMV.
I mean, I'd love to have the same elevator pitch that we gave in the ARC this morning, but I suppose I can go a little bit more in depth than that. I think between the three of us, the level of trust that we have, the level of compassion we have for one another, and, you know, the scope of the kind of task we've been able to take on is truly something that is unique to this team kind of in general. I mean, coming from the background of running the largest student-run faculty orientation in the entire country, like that is no small task. And I trust these two beside me absolutely implicitly, and I feel like, you know, we try to kind of shine that through. Through building our platform, like Team ERA said, it was all about hearing the student voice. And, you know, we are not going to pretend and stand up here and say that we understand everything. We don't understand the AMS in depth, and we don't understand every single student experience. It would take about 100 lives to get through that, but we really did our best to kind of compartmentalize that, focus in on those central issues, and focus in on what it is that we can do with our plethora of experience that kind of touch all corners of this school, not just in student government, but in so many other areas. What can we do for you? What it is that we can learn, that we can implement to be able to serve the students? Because if elected, we have the privilege to be able to represent the student body that is so incredibly diverse, that has so many different needs, and we want to ensure that, you know, those are met. And even like speaking one little point about representation, we are one of the rare all-female teams that, you know, the AMS may have ever had in about 160 years. And to see women in positions like this, I know as a first year, I would have really, really appreciated that.
Thank you. And we'll move on to TBD. Go for it.
I'm going to keep it short. I really only have three things to say. The first is that we're willing to make ourselves uncomfortable to enact change. Sometimes when you're making change, you need to make yourself uncomfortable. You need to make others uncomfortable. You need to say the things that some people don't want to hear. That's just the reality of making a difference. The second thing is that we're willing to learn and accept our shortcomings, to admit what we don't know. None of us are perfect. None of the institutions that we're going to be working with are perfect. The first step to also fixing something is acknowledging what's wrong with it and how it can be fixed. And lastly, the students matter more to us than the university. Like, honestly, the student body has done more for me than the university has. During COVID, the university screwed me over with tuition costs. I'm sure that most of you guys dealt with the same thing. I went and I talked to them. They didn't answer. I had a petition with over 3,500 people. They still didn't answer. The reality is the day-to-day interactions, the people that I meet in my classes, out when I'm going clubbing, when I'm doing other things, when I'm just like in the library studying, that's what matters to me. My loyalties lie with each and every student, not with the university, not with the AMS. I will work for the AMS ultimately, but the students matter more than any of that.
Thank you. Okay, our next question. What are the largest challenges you anticipate facing as an executive team, and what strategies will you employ to overcome them? We'll start with KMB this time.
Absolutely. And I think the discussion of challenges is so important, especially when you're kind of reflecting as a representative of the student body, is that no challenge should be really tackled from one perspective alone. Something that immediately comes to mind, I know for us, is student engagement and student communication. At the end of the day, the AMS is for the students, by the students, and the AMS needs to improve its ability to be able to effectively communicate with its student population, what it can do for them. And in addition, what can the students offer them in return? Students offer so much. Students are the lifeblood of the community. Students are the backbone of the community, and the AMS is for them as well. So with that in mind, that student engagement piece is, what can the AMS do for you? What opportunities do we provide for you? What resources do we provide for you? And making sure that students can make that informed decision to be engaged or not engaged. And with that in mind, fill the positions that we need kind of going forward, ensuring that the AMS remains prosperous for all students.
Thank you. TBD, we'll go to you next.
So sorry, just to clarify, the question was, what is our biggest challenge we foresee this year? Or if we were to be elected?
The question was, what are the largest challenges you anticipate facing as an executive team, and what strategies will you employ to face them?
Honestly, I think even in the consultations, the current exec said this, you will have a lot of ideas, you'll have a lot of things you want to bring change to, you just won't have enough time to do it. And I feel like that is our biggest struggle. We have a lot of, I know, just talking, making our platform, there's a lot of things we want to do with the AMS, we want to do with the Queens community, we want to bring change, we want to make it better for everyone. And I feel like there is just, it's a year, and a year seems like a long time, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not. And trying to get everything we want to get done accomplished in the timely manner of a year, I feel it will be our biggest struggle. But I think with the team we have here, we are pretty effective, we're pretty efficient, we're ready to go. And I feel like just our motivation alone will help us just keep motivated to get the things we want to get done.
Great. And ERA, go for it.
Yeah, I can take this one. So something that's a little bit unique about our team is that the three of us have never worked together as a team before. And Ryan, never heard of him until like 2 months ago. But I also think that that's a really great strength, because it means that we bring different perspectives. We've worked at FICSA, at ASIS, we've worked at the AMS. We're the only team that has someone outside of ASIS, and I think that's a real win. And we also, I think we bring this wanting to have diverse perspectives into everything we do. We've done over 100 consultations. We want to speak to every student. We want to learn more. We met with every single FactSoc exec. We're really, really passionate about making sure that we are bringing a diverse perspective because we have to represent 20,000 students, and that's a lot. And so I think, although I think it'll be tricky and we're working on figuring out, but we also, there's nothing better like a campaign to bond people. I could really say it's a tough time, it's a busy time, it's a lot of fun. And we're really excited to kind of bring these values into hopefully being an executive.
Excellent, thank you. Our next question. Nursing students have come forward to make allegations about their experiences. As a student advocate, how do you plan on supporting these students? And we'll start with TBD this time.
So I feel like our broad theme was advocacy, and it's just like Dante said, getting into the uncomfortable spaces with the school, calling the school out when they need to be called out, representing the students when they need to be represented, hearing their concerns, having them voice it to us, taking what they said and not changing it, not making it different, taking verbatim what they said and voicing it to the school. I feel like just by that, making sure they know they're heard, we can do a lot more for nursing students. We can do a lot more for any other student that doesn't feel welcome in Queens or feel that they have a voice. And just by advocating on their behalf, being comfortable when to talk in situations that may be uncomfortable, being comfortable to speak to the school, speaking to these people in powerful positions, just being comfortable to speak when we need to speak, when we need to speak up for people who can't speak for themselves.
Thank you. And we'll go to ERA next.
Phenomenal. I get to take this one again. So first, on a personal note, I just want to say, regarding nursing students, like this is an issue that's really important to us. My housemate's a nurse, my sister's a nurse. We did a lot of consultations with nursing students and the previous NSS president. And I just want to say, like, there is not enough support for them currently. When I asked, one of the questions we asked was, are there courses or academic supports or supports within your program when you deal with grief and death? And they're like, oh yeah, totally, for the patient or for the patient's family. And there are not supports for nursing students that are going through traumatic work. But the other thing that I want to touch on as well is that yes, we want to advocate for nursing students, but we really want to empower the nursing student society to advocate for their students because they know those issues best, and we really want to help them in advocating. And that's something that came up in a lot of our consultations as well. With smaller faculty societies, sometimes they feel like the bond with the AMS is not as close and they can't call on the AMS as easily. So we really want to make sure that we're standing up and backing up the Nursing Science Society. I changed the name there, but NSS in order to support them in their issues, whether that be funding, whether that be support for students with mental health, and all of the above.
Thank you, and we'll go to KMB.
In terms of this, I think it's something we're really passionate about, and it was something we were actually discussing earlier this afternoon. Like for instance, like I work in a hospital right now, and I see the direct impact that stories like this have had on nurses, and it's appalling, and it's tragic, and it's horrific. So I think this is a really multifaceted problem because we're not only looking at current nursing students, we're looking at students who graduated a year ago, looking at students who graduated 10 years ago, or even more than that. And this is all about hearing their perspectives because we need to validate these experiences. We need to acknowledge them and we need to thank them for coming forward because going to platforms like this, it is no easy task. Putting your life and putting your stories out on the line, it's not something that should be taken lightly. And, as an exec, we need to bring these students and these alumni and these people who need to be part of these conversations into rooms and into spaces where they can have their voice heard. They need to take up space. They need to take up room because at the end of the day, anything, said about me, but not by me is not for me. They need to be front and center for this entire issue. And, we think that Queens and the AMS have had a little bit of experience with this when we speak about, Stolen by Smith. And we can take from that experience, we can see what improved after that and see the institutional change that needed to occur post that. And I think, as an executive, we'd be fully prepared to support the NSS in whatever way, shape, or form that they would need because we would want them to lead that discussion on that. We see fit.
Never mind, we won't go to them, not yet. Okay, next question. This past year, the Social Issues Commissioner was terminated from their position, which left many students, especially marginalized students, confused. How would you have handled this situation? And this time we'll start with ERA.
Yeah, so I think one really large thing is that termination from the AMS is something that should never really be taken lightly, and I think a lot of conversations need to be held around that, especially for a position that's as important as a Social Issues Commission. And so just ensuring that when those kinds of issues come up, we are doing all the research and consulting with all the past 6 as well as the permanent staff, and really seeing what they have to say as well.
And I also want to say, just on the note of the sick as well, that's something that we are passionate about as well, is making sure that the Social Issues Commission potentially is not only responsible to the AMS executive. It's been bounced around the past of them reporting to a board that could oversee them, and it's less of a conflict of interest. Because at the end of the day, when you hire someone as a Social Issues Commissioner, we do really want to throw our support and our trust in them. And so we will be taking hiring very seriously, but we also want to be able to really support someone in. And we understand that work in equity serving spaces can be controversial, and we want to be able to make sure that they have the support and the resources they need.
Thank you. And we'll go to KMV next.
I think with scenarios such as these, as much as you can be transparent, it's important to be transparent while also respecting everyone's privacy involved. In addition to that, HR tends to not be entirely universal, sometimes between the AMS and different services and where you're represented. So for instance, taking the model of COGO's universal kind of HR policy has been incredibly helpful to discuss in our own consultations, and knowing what to keep in mind and to make sure everyone is kind of being adequately addressed in those scenarios. In addition to that, the emotional labor with equity roles is overwhelming at times, and it's making sure that we understand that going into the role and providing pre-supports before a problem does arise. And with that in mind, Michelle, is one ask.
Also, I think next steps would be addressing this in the future. How can we change? How can we just continue going on to develop better and have better transparency? I also think it's really important to highlight the work that new social issue commissioners are doing right now, what they're doing on campus. Show them that even though unfortunately a position was terminated, and we want to respect everyone, make sure everyone is okay in that situation, we want to continue going forward and highlight the amazing work that's being done in lieu of what happened.
Thank you. TBD.
So if I can just say, this SIC termination is public knowledge. There's a Queen's Journal article about it. And honestly, I'm not sure if the other teams did get a chance to read it or not, but it is definitely extremely eye-opening. If I can actually just quote from it, the former SIC said her experience checks out with those of 3 female AMS senior managers of color during RTZ's tenure in the 2021-22 academic year. So I don't know about you guys, I see that as an extremely problematic thing to even exist in the AMS at all. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. I think it's true. It doesn't really matter either way. The fact that somebody made this allegation in the first place shows that it's a problem. If anything like this exists, it needs to be stamped out right away. No one should ever feel unwelcome because of the way that they look, because of their religion, because of anything like that. The fact that this article has to exist in the first place is a problem, and it's something that needs to be addressed before it happens.
All right, thank you. We will move on to our next question. How do you plan on addressing unaffordable rents? What are your thoughts on working with the university to build more affordable upper year housing? And this time we will begin with KMV.
I think definitely all as students and as people who likely a lot of us live off campus, we know that rent prices are soaring. And the thing is, like in Kingston, it has one of the highest no vacancy rates, I believe, in the entire province. That's a massive, massive issue that the university needs to take kind of part in. There are a lot of different stakeholders, a lot of different entities kind of within the Kingston community, but also within the government of Ontario who could really institute programs to help alleviate costs like this. I mean, whether that in Queens, it's like expanding financial bursaries for these types of programs, or even, and we put this in our platform, hosting tenant rights night. There are some instances where landlords increase rent where they legally do not have the bounds to do so, and students do not know about that because you are thrust into living on your own at 18, 19 years old. So that education piece is extremely crucial for saving you money in that regard, or even like housing standards. A lot of these are not kept up to date. They're not kept up to par, and educating students, the more we can do that, or putting like legal aid that hopefully going to referendum in the fall, providing this legal counsel, those are things that are going to make an exponential difference, not only with the inflation of housing prices, but also with dealing with the repercussions of that.
Thank you. Team TBD will go to you.
So when I first, this is more personal, but when I first got to Queens, most of the majority of rent for the houses I saw were around 500, 600, higher end 700, 800. But now these days, it seems like most of the rent is gone up to 700, 800. And like, I know I can't afford that without my parents' help. And I know most students can't afford that at all with based off minimum wage, and just trying to find ways to lobby to the town of Kingston to solve issues as of like housing issues. There is a housing crisis in the student ghetto. There is not enough students. There's as enrollment keeps getting larger, there's not enough houses to keep up with that. Finding ways to allocate space for students for housing, finding ways to work with Kingston, to work with the government to make housing cheaper for students. Lobby to the government for a fund to help students. Finding ways to make money. Rent will never go down. We have to find ways to help subsidize students and subsidize their rent. And whether that be through the legal aid, having the lawyers on your side to fight bad landlords, to fight landlords that are getting away with screwing you in your contracts. Any way possible, we're ready to help. We just have to find the right way to make sure that students and the housing, that students can start paying, so students can afford the housing that they live in.
Thank you. Team ERA, go for it.
All right. So on the topic of protecting students from landlords, some of whom may or may not be fair to those students, one thing that we definitely want to do, and it is already a branch of the AMS, is really empowering and giving more resources to the housing resource manager, who does things like advocating for just making sure students know about like certain laws and making sure things are in place. For example, a lot of students might have their rent increase over the legal amount and may not contest it if they aren't really aware of it. So the housing resource manager is a great resource to be able to really give students that information. Also, we can definitely be supporting systems that are already in place. So for example, like the Queens Community Housing, where it's like houses or landlords who are partnered with Queens that offer that kind of accessible and more affordable housing to students.
I think another key part of financial accessibility and around housing is reducing the other costs that students also incur, whether it be food and groceries. You may have seen us in the ARC or Matt Corey handing out little business cards with our socials on it, but it also on the back has a list of different places where you can get discounts, whether it's within the Kingston community or online. So I think one of our goals is also making sure that other discounts and other ways to save money is accessible to be able to reallocate money to housing. And I guess on that note as well as making students aware is, I don't know how many of you actually know this as well, but the CRA is actually giving away $500 to students as like a one-time rent top-up. And I know I've told all my friends about this, and not many people know about this. So again, and one of our goals is making sure that students are aware of the resources that are accessible to them and that are at their accessibility, I guess.
Yeah, because a large part of that is a lot of systems and things are already in place. We just need to kind of push the word so those students know.
Thank you. Okay, our next question. Each executive and senior management team brings new perspectives and ideas for their goal plan, which we look forward to seeing in your term. The current team has done a lot of great work this year, investing time and resources into projects. After doing consultations and observing everyone this year, are there any ongoing initiatives that you look forward to continuing their momentum? And this time we'll start with TBD.
The food bank is definitely an initiative that I would like to continue working with. As I talked about a little bit earlier, it's definitely something I'm very passionate about. I don't think any student should really have to be food insecure. Excuse me. We go to such a expensive university. There's a lot of concentration of wealth at this university. I don't think that's a secret to anyone here. We all pay a lot of money to go here. We all pay a lot of money for the housing here. So to think that students are food insecure is really alarming to me. And I think a lot more work can be done within the food bank to sort of rectify that. It's not like that will be the end all be all solution. There's obviously a lot more things that can be done on that matter, but I think working with the food bank to hold more food drives and provide more resources is a wonderful first step in sort of alleviating some of that food insecurity that a lot of students experience nowadays.
All right, excellent. And we'll go to ERA next.
Awesome. I will also briefly touch on the food market. In a lot of our consultations, we chatted with Quick and as well as Sierra and Benny, who work at the food bank right now. And one of the individuals from Quick actually mentioned how, international students do struggle to find food and are often thrown into Canada and don't really know where to find resources and things like that. So hopefully with the increased fee, we are able to, accommodate more dietary restrictions rather than on a needs basis. So having an abundance of supply for different like gluten-free and as well as different international diets. And I think that is super important.
Additionally, one project that I'm aware that the president is currently working on is conducting a survey to learn more about the needs and wants of students who are online about their insurance plan. And so I think that's one project that I think will be very difficult, but I'm very excited to take on because it's definitely something that affects hundreds of students, up to 2,000 students. That can definitely like make a large impact on them because I know I've had a lot of difficulty with student care, but I also have access to student care, right? And so while it has helped me in many ways, it's also brought a lot of issues along the way. And, I think there are lots of areas that can be fixed in all areas of student insurance. So like, it's not a surprise that student care has 1.4 stars, but I'm ready to kind of really advocate for what Queen students need.
Great. And KMV, you are next.
I feel like between the three teams, we're all very passionate about the food bank because we've, consulted with the passionate individuals there. So I suppose we'll touch on that as well. One of the things we were talking about with Sierra was, the food bank is actually available to grad students and people do not realize that. In fact, a lot of grad students do not know that. So I think like in the future, working with SPGS and seeing where like more collaboration can come from there is fantastic. Also, we talk about food insecurity, community engagement when it comes to actually bringing food like to that table is going to be imperative. But we don't want to talk your ear too much off about the food bank because I know that's all a really important issue to all of us. I suppose another avenue we can also take is, with community engagement, the AMS Media Center. That merger between the PCNC and Studio Q, that is going to be a massive opportunity for student engagement with the community because we have such a talented breadth of individuals who provide so many services. Getting that out into the community, supporting that community through there really ameliorates the relationship in between, Kingstonians and Queen's University students.
Great, thank you. All right, our next question. Because the Commission of Environmental Sustainability, CES, is still a relatively new commission, how will you ensure that sustainability is brought into external and internal AMS practices? We'll begin with ERA.
Phenomenal, yeah. I think this is a huge one because something that was really interesting in my consultations is when I got to meet with the current commissioner. One thing that was highlighted was it was great to be compensated. It was great to have this role, but sometimes there's a little bit of a lack of support in the AMS because it's a little bit isolated. But when I chatted with clubs and folks on campus that are involved in sustainability work outside, the comment was the opposite, that they're doing a lot of uncompensated labor and a lot of work. And they have a lot of support, but they have a lot of support. And they have 50 club members, and that's really exciting as well to see. And so I think ideally you kind of want to merge these things. And I think there is a lot of great sustainability work being done on campus by other individuals. And so I think we want to increase opportunities within the AMS for folks to get involved and also collaborate with clubs on campus and folks already doing great work in order to both hold ourselves accountable, hold the university accountable, and hold our community accountable.
Thank you. Team KMV, your chance to answer.
Absolutely. Those pieces all so incredibly important, especially with kind of new developments within the AMS, such as these positions. They are extremely important and they do kind of experience that same kind of compassion fatigue as found in other advocacy roles, just in different ways. It's essentially being kind of transparent with these decisions and how we are improving and ensuring kind of, as Alicia said, they are receiving more support, not only from senior positions with the AMS, but getting more students involved with those commissions as well and growing and see where they can go. There's infinite possibility with commissions such as these being developed and finding ways where students want them to go, students need them to go, and where campus needs to develop to catch up and listen to them, and making sure these student-backed positions have the support to develop and grow as they see fit, and not how the AMS necessarily senior management sees fit, but respecting the student leaders in these categories.
Thank you very much. And Team TBD.
I think it's best for me to answer this because as the VPUA, I'm the one who would be working with clubs, and that's kind of like the main focus that I want to take for kind of any initiative that's on campus. And I think especially for environmental initiatives, we may as well look to the experts who are the environmental clubs on campus, and they can work directly with the Environmental Sustainability Commission to continue the initiatives that they have, but also start new ones. Two that I can name are QBAC and QSIS that we've worked with, and I think who the AMS could continue to work with. I know that one initiative that we talked about with the Environmental Sustainability Commissioner during our consultation was to get Coca-Cola off campus, which I know is ambitious, but one that I would love to see continued.
All right, thank you. Our next question. What specific action plan do you have for dismantling social cliques that exist while working within the AMS and can create potentially harmful experiences for students? This time we'll begin with KMB.
Sorry, the mic just caught. Kind of with that in mind is ensuring that the Queens feels welcoming to all students that take place, especially coming from our orientation background. You know how daunting it is, especially since I know that I didn't come from a school with a lot of people that went here, and coming in and feeling like these schools were almost entryways to having this entire friend group and support group in mind was very discouraging. I felt I had no one here that had my back in the same way that I had in my own hometown. So keeping that in mind and supplying the supports early in this scenario is extremely key, while also respecting, while people can have friendships, people can have friend groups, let's give opportunities to branch out. Let's encourage students to find themselves here. Even if they do have a really core, good friend group from back home, but developing those external relationships. And this is done through, for instance, faculty and major orientation, and finding that kind of right away, the ability to say, you know what, I know I have my support groups, but I can move on. And also, even if I don't have my support groups, here's how I'm going to find them. And here's how I'm going to develop in that way, and providing that social supports from day one, and kind of not down the line when these social cliques do kind of have already developed and are harder to tackle in mind.
Thank you. We'll go to Team TBD next.
Sorry, could you repeat the question? I just want to make sure I answer it fully correctly.
The question was, what specific action plan do you have for dismantling social cliques that exist while working within the AMS and can create potentially harmful experiences for students?
Okay, well, I guess again, from personal experience, I came to Queens knowing no one. No one from my high school in my year decided to come to Queens with me. I had to come make new friends, establish new connections, meet new people. And one of the problems I ran into was the cliques. A lot of people come here with their friends, with their groups, with their high school friends and clubs or camps or whatever, and they stay within those circles. And I'm gonna be honest, for someone who's went through it, I don't have the answer. It's such a hard construct to break down. We as people like to stay close to who we know. And to try and get people to break those cliques, to break those connections is hard. But for the AMS, it's just making sure we hire equitably, diversity, just making sure we have different opinions. We're breaking those cliques apart. We're making sure we hire abundance of people and just ensuring that every viewpoint is represented, that everyone feels welcome in this working environment, and that everyone just feels like the AMS is not just a job, but it's a sense of community, it's a sense of family. It's not just you're out of the clique. We welcome anyone. We want everyone, and just to have everyone be heard.
Awesome, thank you. ERA, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I think a huge one is, a large portion of the AMS employees and volunteers do come from ASIS, and we do recognize that we are a majority ASIS team as well. And reaching out and trying to support those faculty societies and encouraging them to come and engage with the AMS. And sometimes it's hard, and we have to break down those barriers. Like a lot of engineering students take an internship between 3rd and 4th year, or nursing students in their last semester would take and do clinicals and everything. And Con Ed has 5 years. So I think just creating more opportunities for other faculties, especially the smaller faculties, to get involved is super important. And it brings more diverse perspectives into the AMS and into the workforce. And hopefully that would be able to prevent the cliques from forming. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, our next question. How do you, as the incoming exec, plan to lead the new senior management if you don't have any experience in their roles? And we'll begin with Team TBD, please.
Thank you. In terms of the new management, the philosophy that I would take into it is leading by example. I'm a firm believer that if the people you're managing see you working equally as hard, they will also work just as hard with you. And I think that's very important. It's also very important to hire a team that you know you're going to work well with and that you believe is going to do their job very well and work as hard as expected of them. I'm a very firm believer in the philosophy that surrounding yourself with the best people is the surefire way to a successful organization.
Okay, great. ERA, go ahead.
Yeah, that's a very fair question because it's going to be very difficult for us to be able to relate to the experiences of all the services and head managers because, again, that would take a long time to be able to have all that experience. So I think the largest thing is just throughout the hiring process and throughout the early stages of transition or learning and transitioning is just really creating a really great sense of trust and also just creating, like setting everyone up for success, making sure they feel supported. And so once that foundation is laid, then they're bound for success.
Awesome, thank you. And KMV.
All right, I love this question very much. Okay, so something that I would love to do or just have the opportunity to do is I'm not going to know every single service. I'm not going to know what's going on. Every service requires its own detail, its own plan, its own, I guess, view into the future. Something that I would love to do is just have a day in the service. Of course, I'm not going to know, but I can at least start and begin in the roles of someone who actually works there, listening to what they have on a day-to-day basis, and basically also trusting the team that we hire. There's some amazing people in our community, and I'm so incredibly excited if we do get the opportunity to work with them. And I guess I would just like to also say that we just learn and grow together, which I think is really important, and just leaning off each other, listening to each other's ideas, and just moving the AMS towards, I guess, a brighter future or an amazing future.
Okay, great. And just so our audience knows how we're doing on time, KMV has 40 seconds left, ERA has 37 seconds left, and Team TBD has 1 minute and 50 seconds left, so almost 2 minutes. With that being said, let's go into our next question. What would you do in your roles to improve the orientation branch of the AMS such that accessibility, communication, and equity are at the forefront of change? And we'll begin with Team ERA.
Yeah, amazing. We are a team with a lot of orientation experience, but very different orientation experience. Liz has worked in access orientation, has also worked on ORT, and I've worked on the university orientation side of things. And something that we really have come together over is that the priority needs to be building back orientation, building back that spirit, this time with accessibility and inclusivity in mind. And so this means working with the university in order to make sure that we can fund and find the accessibility resources required to pull it off, and also working with faculty societies and their execs to build an orientation that is going to welcome all students to Queens. Because when you read the survey reports every single year, there are still students that do not feel welcome, and they need to be a priority.
Okay, thank you. And with that, ERA's time has elapsed, so thank you. All right, we'll go to KMV next.
We'll do this quickly. Look, I think post-COVID, we have the really unique opportunity to not only integrate faculty orientation, but so bridging that gap, figuring out where we can work together and where we can, ameliorate the experience of students because it's the forefront of everything that it is what we want to do. I think that's going to be very, very imperative as we move forward with, a new orientation model and we figure out, when you're talking about dismantling cliques, that's going to be a really, really large part of it. Other than that, we all know that orientation executives need to come back early. Let's get for those accommodations. Let's make sure these opportunities are accessible because at the end of the day, they are the heart and soul of everything.
Okay, thank you so much. With that, KMV's time has elapsed, and we'll move on to TBD next.
I would assume that this is already being done, but I think consulting with older students who've already been through orientation is something that's really good because ultimately the orientation coordinators have an idea of how orientation went, but students who've gone through orientation as those students and those freshmen and freshwomen will know best. So I think that working with them to kind of know what's the best thing to do is really important, and also just kind of having it as not really orientation that you're part of Queens, but that you're part of a community.
I think it's also very important that with the COVID years that we experienced, it's important to acknowledge that a lot of students really didn't get to experience orientation. To me, online orientation, it was a thing, but I don't know if it necessarily counts. It would be nice to see some events that involve some upper year students who got to miss out on that because it is such a wonderful experience as for first years coming in. And it's a disservice to allow those students to go through their university career without having that. Sure.
I just also to add to that about upper years being involved. I really wanted to see Young Gravy, but I wasn't able to because it was only for first years, unfortunately.
All right, thank you. Okay, and this question will just be for TBD as they have time remaining. How do you plan on furthering international student initiatives on campus? On furthering international student initiatives on campus.
I'm sorry, one more time.
How do you plan on furthering international student initiatives on campus?
Okay. No, it's a great question. Again, personal experience from someone who has had a first year. When I was in first year, I roomed with one of my best friends now, Young, who came from China. He didn't know anyone just like me. He didn't know how to speak the language. He didn't know how to talk to anyone. And he felt like he was disincluded in the orientation. He didn't go to a lot of events. He missed out on the full Eng experience because he just didn't feel like he could connect with people. He didn't feel like he could speak the language well enough to do things. And I guess hearing from his perspective and hearing more of those perspectives is the best way to go about it. And
Thank you.
that's the time.
That's great. Thank you all so much for that wonderful Q&A. Okay, so to wrap up, I just want to remind everyone that if you have any questions or concerns about elections, election procedures, candidates in general, please contact Amir at secretariat@ams.queensu.ca. He loves receiving emails, so he'll be so happy to get yours. But seriously, thank you all so much for being here, and thank you to our wonderful candidates. Yes, let's clap for them. It's really an incredible privilege to have 3 teams to choose from for AMS Exec. It requires a lot of courage and humility to even run, and it's a big responsibility that they're signing themselves up for. Because of their willingness to run, it means that us as student body have more choice in how we're represented in our student government, and that is a really huge privilege. That being said, students have to make the choice and be willing to vote. So on February 6th and 7th, you will receive an email notifying you of a ballot. Take the few minutes to click on the link and fill out the ballot so your voice can be reflected in the future AMS. We really, really appreciate everyone who votes, and it makes such a big difference. And to sweeten the deal, we have a few amazing prizes that will be offered on raffle automatically if you submit a ballot. Some of those prizes include AirPods Pro, an Xbox, a Fitbit, a Bluetooth speaker, gift cards for Uber Eats, Lululemon, Tricolor, amazing prizes that you could win simply by voting. And who wouldn't want to vote for one of these teams here? So we really encourage it. Thank you once again so much for coming. It's really been a pleasure, and please vote.